My husband willed me a rundown house in Tennessee. What I discovered inside changed everything. But before I share my story, please take a minute of your precious time to support our channel. Your support and love keeps us going. I never imagined the reading of Harold's what would be the day my own child betrayed me. The family residence and all holdings in Meridian Heights, the attorney announced, will transfer to Ms. Zuri Monroe Carter. My daughter's fingers threaded through her husband's. Darius Carter, always polished, always calculating. Their smiles were practiced, careful, public. I kept my posture straight, as I had through 39 years of marriage to a man who prized steadiness. Harold wasn't sentimental, but he'd always been thorough. Surely he'd accounted for me. And to his wife, Lila Monroe, the attorney continued, clearing his throat, he leaves a recently purchased tract near Pisgah National Forest in the Blue Ridge region of North Carolina, approximately 38 acres and a cabin acquired 4 years ago. Silence spread like a spill. Zuri finally spoke. Is that all? The attorney adjusted his glasses. The North Carolina property is fully paid, with clear title. Darius's smile tightened. Zuri reached for graciousness the way she had at debutante teas and charity galas. Mama can stay with us, she announced, glossing concern over triumph. Darius nodded without warmth. 2 weeks later, I learned what their generosity cost. In the house I'd once ruled, I became a shadow, sleeping in the guest room, cooking and cleaning, instructed to make myself scarce when their friends came over. I was no longer lady of the house, only a complication that had come attached to it. After one of their dinner parties, Darius cornered me in the kitchen, rolling amber liquid in one of my crystal tumblers from our wedding set. This isn't working, Ms. Monroe, he said, voice butter smooth with a blade inside it. Zuri and I need our space. I stay out of your way, I replied, stacking plates still slick with the meal I'd cooked. That's not the point. His tone hardened. Harold knew what he was doing leaving you that place in Carolina. He knew you weren't built to stand up on your own. I turned, dish towel in my hands. Excuse me? Let's be honest, he said, drinking courage and arrogance together. You've never handled bills. Never kept a job outside the home. Harold carried you. Now we're supposed to do the same? Before I could answer, Zuri stepped in, her face arranged in apology. Mama, we've talked. It's time you go see your property. It's yours. Maybe it's time you learned to stand on your own 2 feet. The next morning my luggage sat in the hall like a verdict. Darius pressed an envelope into my palm, directions, a key, while his satisfaction shone. Don't come back until you can support yourself, he said. We're not running a charity. Zuri hugged me as if the embrace might bruise. It's for your own good, Mama. At 63, I became homeless in my own life. I loaded my things into the used sedan Harold had bought me 2 years earlier and began the long drive from Georgia to the mountains of North Carolina. For the first 100 miles, the road swam through my tears. How could Harold have left me exposed? How could my own daughter discard me like last season's coat? The route wound higher and rougher as the day thinned, the final stretch a rutted path under a cathedral of trees. By the time the last switchback spat me out at a clearing, the sun was sliding down behind the ridgeline. I stared at the cabin and felt my heart sink. 2 stories listing on tired stilts, a porch with a spine of sagging boards, shingles missing like a mouth with teeth knocked out. Windows were cracked, some boarded. It looked like a dare. Oh, Harold, I whispered, easing the car to a stop. Why? I forced myself up the steps that complained beneath my weight. The key resisted the lock before surrendering with a grudging twist. Hinges wailed as the door opened. I groped for a switch and found one. The lights trembled to life. My suitcase fell from my hand. Inside, the place did not match the masquerade. Modern furniture, warm woods, soft textiles. A kitchen that gleamed with stainless and stone. Hardwood floors cushioned by thick rugs. It wasn't merely livable, it was beautiful. But beauty wasn't what stole my breath. On a small table, a single place setting, crumbs on the plate as if a meal had just ended. A coffee mug half full, cooling into memory. Beside it, An open notebook, neat script flowing across the page. Harold's handwriting. The date at the top punched the air for my lungs. 3 days ago. My husband had been dead for 3 weeks. I touched the page with trembling fingers. Lila will arrive soon. Everything must be ready. God, I hope she understands why I did it this way. I turned the page. What followed were careful diagrams of the house, walls that weren't walls, hallways that bent into spaces no blueprint would admit. Arrows pointed to passages behind bookshelves and under stairs, to a tunnel system that sloped away from the foundations like veins. A sound deeper in the house lifted the hair along my arms. I grabbed the nearest heavy object, a brass candlestick, and moved down the hall, my pulse a drum in my throat. The rooms looked lived in, a study with papers mid-thought, a bedroom whose sheets held the ghost of a body, a closet with men's clothes, Harold's size, but in styles he'd never wear. Back in the study, a seam in the built-in shelves caught my eye. One shelf sat a finger's width forward of the others. I tugged. The unit swung open on hidden hinges to reveal a narrow passage. Beyond it lay a room from a spy thriller, walls quilted with maps, photographs, and news clippings. Corkboards with webbed strings snared familiar faces. City council members from Meridian Heights, state officials, developers in sharp suits, and front and center, Darius. Pin notes listed meetings, transfers, shell firms, code names. Printouts named offshore accounts and consulting fees. It wasn't sloppy greed, it was a machine. On the desk rested an envelope addressed in Harold's hand, Lila. I broke the seal. My love, if you're reading this, then the house has revealed itself, and you've stepped into the truth. Forgive the harm I've done you. There was no way to warn you that wouldn't put you in greater danger. I am not dead, not as they believe. Years ago, while auditing contracts for Kingsley Urban Partners, I found irregularities that led to a ring involving Darius, several state officers, and a maze of shell companies. Public works money siphoned through municipal bonds and community revitalization fronts. Once I started tracing the flows, I noticed I was being watched. Our home was bugged. Our phones tapped. I bought this place under a holding name and dressed it to look abandoned. Here, I recorded everything. 3 months ago, word reached me, they planned to erase me. I staged what they expect a man my age to die of. Your grief had to be honest for them to believe it. Why leave you the cabin? Because I knew Darius would push you out. Zuri, our own child, has known about his dealings for years. She is not innocent. She chose money and status long ago. This house holds enough to dismantle them, but it also paints a target on you. You can take what's here to Special Agent Malik Rivers in Asheville. His number and address are in the desk drawer. Or you can choose the life in the safe behind the painting in the main bedroom. Cash, identities, and a path away. Don't trust Zuri. Don't go back to Meridian Heights. Wait for me to set the final pieces. I pray I can come to you soon. I have always known you are stronger than they let you believe. H. The paper shook in my hands. Harold alive. Zuri compromised. My life not ended, but split open. Tires crunched on gravel outside. I moved to the window, parting the blinds with one finger. 2 black SUVs slid into the clearing. Doors opened. Men in dark clothes fanned out toward the porch with the quiet efficiency of people who'd practiced this on other doors, on other nights. Darius's voice returned to me from the kitchen. Don't come back until you can support yourself. They hadn't expected me to stay. They'd expected a frightened old woman to turn around at the sight of a ruined porch and limp back to beg. Instead, I'd switched on the lights and read the truth. Now they had come to guarantee the secret died with me. I sealed the hidden door, breath shallow and deliberate. Run. Hide. Fight. All my life, people had mistaken kindness for weakness. Wife, mother, hostess, soft words that conceal steel if you let them. Tonight I learned what I already suspected. They had underestimated me. I slipped down the passageway, turned right where Harold's diagram told me to, and pressed my palm against a panel disguised as wainscoting. The walls sighed open. Beyond, a tight corridor glowed with thread-like lights along the floor, angling down into the earth. Voices echoed above. She's here somewhere. Her car's outside. I reached a small concrete room humming with surveillance feeds. Monitors revealed every angle of the house. The men moved with coordinated purpose, some armed with weapons nobody should have outside a war zone. A switchboard marked house controls sat beneath the screens. Next to it, a red button labeled emergency with a note in Harold's hand. Only if you must. 30 seconds to exit via main tunnel. The contents of a small wall safe, cash, passports with my face under other names, a compact pistol with weight I remembered from range days with Harold, fit into a black backpack that waited on a hook like it had been expecting me. On the screens, one of the men found the secret study. Got something, he called, and the others poured in like floodwater. They started scooping up files and drives, stuffing them into bags. Call it in, one said. He listened, jaw tightening. Understood no traces. Another asked, and the widow? The first man's answer was a shrug with teeth. Find her, then light it. Heat crawled up my spine. I flicked the house controls. The cabin above snapped to black. Sirens howled awake. Emergency lights strobed. Shouts erupted on the screen. I pressed emergency. A calm recorded voice, a ghost of Harold, filled the room. Protocol engaged. Controlled seal in 30 seconds. Proceed to exit. Metal shutters screamed down somewhere overhead. Locks slammed home like fists. The floor trembled. I took the map from the wall, routes veining into the forest, and ran. The passage narrowed, the air cooling as I moved deeper. Behind me, a muffled boom crawled through the tunnel walls, then another, hardly house-flattening, more like iron doors clanging shut forever. If they'd hoped to burn the house and call it confusion, they'd find only sealed rooms and the edges of their own reflections, trapped on camera. I didn't stop until the corridor turned from smooth concrete to rough-cut stone, the old bones of the mountain wearing Harold's modern arteries. Somewhere above, men who'd come to bury me were trapped in a maze designed by a man who knew how they thought. I leaned against the cold rock, breath trembling, and understood something that cracked me open and filled me with fire. They'd hunted a lamb and found a lion's den. To be continued. The tunnel emptied into a second chamber, where screens glowed with angles from hidden cameras mounted outside the cabin. On one feed, I saw the SUV's engines still running. On another, men swore and clawed at the sealed study, pounding fists against reinforced doors. Harold had thought of everything, detonations to collapse passageways, automated locks to trap intruders, even backup power to keep surveillance rolling. On a hook by the exit hatch hung a small pack marked with tape. Pharrell. Inside I found bottled water, a compass, a flashlight, and a printed map of the mountain trails. Harold had prepared for this moment as though he knew I would come, as though he trusted I would find courage in the dark. The emergency tunnel sloped downward for what felt like half a mile before it opened into the woods. I emerged into damp night air, the Carolina hills stretching around me like a secret. From my vantage, I could see smoke rising faintly behind the cabin, not from fire but from sealed vents expelling dust from the controlled collapses inside. For hours I walked through underbrush, following Harold's trail markers, faint white paint on tree trunks, tiny reflective pins hammered into bark. At dawn, I reached a hunter's shack marked on the map as Safe Point B. Inside were supplies. Canned beans, blankets, and a small satellite phone taped with a note, call only if necessary. Protocol. Heron. My hand shook as I dialed the only number programmed. It rang once, twice, then a voice I knew answered. Protocol. The man demanded, crisp and guarded. Blue Heron at midnight. I recited, the words Harold had written in his letter. Silence. Then Lila? Is it really you? The breath left my chest. Harold, I whispered. You're alive. My God. Thank the Lord, he said, his voice breaking. Are you safe? Did you make it out? I'm alive, I replied, though my voice trembled with anger as much as relief. No thanks to Zuri or Darius. They tried to kill me, Harold. Men with guns came to that cabin. I know, he said.
His tone tightened.
I feared they'd track you sooner than expected. Did you activate the emergency system?
Yes.
They're sealed inside, at least for now. Then listen carefully. Under the cot, there's a tracking device. Turn it on, and I'll send someone to collect you. I stared at the floorboard where he said it would be. For a moment, I wanted to do exactly as told. But then I thought of Zuri's cold eyes in the kitchen, her hand clutching Darius's. I thought of their smugness as they banished me from my own home. No, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. No. Harold sounded stunned. Lila, this isn't safe. You need to stay hidden until... I'm not hiding anymore. I cut in. I'm going to Asheville. You said there's a federal agent, Malik Rivers. I'll take the evidence to him myself. Abby, Harold pleaded, using the nickname he alone had given me. You don't know what you're up against. I know enough, I said. Our daughter helped plan your death. She turned her back on me. On us. I won't rest until she and Darius answer for it. There was silence on the line. Then, softer. You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for. I ended the call, pressing the phone against my chest. The tears came, hot and unrelenting, not just from fear but from the betrayal etched deep into me. Yet beneath the grief was something harder, sharper. Determination. By mid-morning, I packed what I could carry: food, water, cash, and the pistol Harold had left in the bag. My body ached from the long night, but I pushed forward. According to the map, a small settlement lay 8 miles north, just a cluster of homes, a church, and a general store. If I reached it unseen, perhaps I could find a ride closer to Asheville. The hike was brutal. The terrain clawed at my ankles, and the September heat pressed down like judgment. Memories of younger days, camping trips with Harold, Sundays teaching Zuri to ride her bike, surfaced with each painful step. What had happened to the girl who once ran to me for comfort? How had she become a woman willing to kill her mother for money? By noon, the dirt road curled into view. Ahead, the settlement appeared, a few leaning houses, a weathered store with a rusted sign, and a gas pump that looked more relic than service. I smoothed my hair, dusted my clothes, and composed a lie. A tourist stranded when her rental broke down. Harmless. Forgettable. The store screen door whined as I pushed it open. A wiry man behind the counter lifted his head. Morning, ma'am. Don't see many folks on foot around here. Everything all right? Car trouble, I said, forcing a weary smile. Out near the ridge. No cell service. He nodded. That happens plenty. Mail truck comes by soon, headed toward Asheville. Driver might give you a lift. I thanked him and browsed the shelves, buying water and a cap with cash from Harold's stash. At the bulletin board near the door, a fresh flyer stopped me cold. My own face stared back, printed beneath the word missing. The text described me as a 63-year-old woman with confusion and dementia who had wandered away from her family's home. At the bottom, contact Darius Carter, concerned son-in-law. The storekeeper followed my gaze. Fella in a fancy SUV dropped them off this morning. Said his poor mother-in-law is sick. Got folks out searching. I murmured something vague, angling my face away. Inside, rage and fear tangled. Darius wasn't just hunting me. He was rewriting my story before I was even in the ground. The bell over the door jingled. I tensed, then relaxed when I saw an older black woman shuffle in, greeting the shopkeeper as Earl. She bought flour, chatting cheerfully, and left. On impulse, I followed her outside. Excuse me, ma'am, I called softly. She turned, her eyes sharp despite her years. Yes, child, I heard you say you live nearby. I need to get to Asheville. My car broke down, and I don't feel safe waiting here. Could I pay you for a ride? She studied me. Not me, but my son's coming later. He lives just outside Asheville. He could take you. Relief loosened my chest. Thank you. Come on then, she said, nodding toward a battered pickup. Name's Mrs. Johnson. Folks call me Mama Joe. You look like you need a meal. I climbed into her truck, glancing back at the general store. The flyer with my face flapped gently in the breeze. I was no longer a grieving widow. I was a fugitive in my own life, and I was just getting started. Mama Joe's pickup rattled down a dirt road toward her ranch, every bump jolting my weary body. She filled the silence with gentle chatter. Her garden, her late husband's Jeep still parked in the barn, her son Tommy who drove in from Asheville once a week with supplies. I nodded, answering when I could, my mind rehearsing lies and clutching truths. Her house sat low against the hills, paint-weathered but proud. A barn hunched nearby, and the scent of hay drifted on the warm breeze. "Come on inside," Mama Joe said, leading me up the steps. "You'll eat, rest a little. Tommy'll be by soon." But as we approached, the front door opened, and there, standing on the porch as if the devil himself had drawn her there, was Zuri. For one stunned second, we both froze. My daughter's face shifted from surprise to something darker. Her hand dipped into her purse, and instinct screamed through me. "Mama Joe, get down," I shouted, shoving her toward the truck as Zuri drew a pistol. The first shot split wood from the porch rail. We scrambled behind the pickup, hearts pounding. "What in God's name?" Mama Joe gasped, clutching my arm. "That's my daughter," I said, breathless. "And she's trying to kill me." Engines growled in the distance. More vehicles. More men. The trap was closing. Mama Joe's fear hardened into steel. "Barn connects to the back pasture. Jeep's in there. Keys still work. We can take the old logging road." She fumbled in her pocket and pressed the keys into my hand. Zuri's voice floated sweet as poisoned honey from the porch. "Mama, come out. Thank God, we found you. Everybody's been so worried." If I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed her. "Now," I hissed to Mama Joe, and we dashed low toward the barn. Bullets spit dirt at our heels. Chickens scattered in alarm as we barreled through the door. In the corner, under a tarp, sat the Jeep, dusty but whole. I yanked off the cover, jammed the key into the ignition. The engine coughed, then roared. Mama Joe slid in beside me, shotgun across her knees. "I know these back roads better than anybody. Drive." The barn doors rattled as men tried to force them. I slammed the Jeep into gear and gunned it through the rear doors, splintering wood as we shot into the open. Behind us, Zuri and her men poured from the barn, fury twisting my daughter's face. "Left at the creek bed," Mama Joe ordered. "Stay off the main roads. They'll expect that." We tore across uneven ground, branches lashing at the Jeep as we plunged into the forest. The vehicles behind us tried to follow, but Mama Joe guided us through paths only locals knew, narrow logging trails and rocky gullies that stripped their SUVs of speed. Finally, after miles of bone-rattling turns, we pulled into a clearing high on a ridge. Smoke curled far behind us, back where Mama Joe's ranch had stood. "They're burning it," she said, her voice breaking. "My home." Guilt slammed into me. "I never meant to drag this to your doorstep." She squared her shoulders, eyes glistening but fierce. "Too late now. And if they think they can scare me off, they picked the wrong woman." We pressed on until the ridge gave way to the valley below. Small towns dotted the distance, Columbia Falls, Asheville beyond. Civilization and danger both. At a diner on the outskirts, Mama Joe's nephew Pete ushered us into a back office. No questions asked. He gave us food, a motel key, and a phone. "Keep out of sight," he warned. That night, I called Agent Malik Rivers, the name Harold had given me. His voicemail answered. I left a careful message. Harold Monroe. Cabin. Evidence. Carter family. Motel 12. Back in a room, I spread Harold's files across the bed. The evidence was meticulous. Names, dates, bank accounts. And in almost every page, Zuri's signature gleamed alongside Darius's. A knock at the door sent fear slicing through me. I raised the pistol. Federal Agent Malik Rivers, a voice called. "I believe we have a mutual friend." Through the chain, I saw a man in his 50s, broad-shouldered, badge raised steady. He reached into his pocket slowly and produced a photograph, me and Harold on our 20th anniversary, a picture private enough to prove trust. I let him in. "You've been through hell," River said, scanning the room. "But you've done what few could. Kept the trail alive." "Where's Harold?" I demanded. "In protective custody," River said. "Alive and waiting. But first, we finish what he started. With this evidence, we can bring down Darius, Zuri, and the network backing them. We've been building a case for months. Your survival just gave us the missing piece." I sat on the bed. The files spread like shards of glass around me. "My own daughter signed away her soul," I whispered. Rivers met my eyes. "And tomorrow morning, ma'am, we'll make her answer for it." The next morning broke cold and sharp, the kind of autumn air that bit through skin and woke nerves like ice water. Agent Rivers arrived at the motel before dawn, his face set with the calm determination of a man who had lived through too many storms. A woman flanked him, tall and lean, who introduced herself simply as Agent Harris. "It's time," Rivers said. "We're taking them down today. Multiple sites, simultaneous arrests. You'll stay with Harris in the vehicle." I dressed in the plain clothes they gave me. Dark slacks, a windbreaker that carried no name, and a cap tugged low. It felt like borrowed armor, flimsy against the weight of what was coming. We drove in silence through familiar streets that now looked like a stranger's map. The grocery store where I used to shop, the park where Zuri once learned to ride her bike. Every corner whispered of a life I no longer owned. When we reached my old neighborhood, I gripped the binoculars Harris handed me. Across 2 blocks, black SUVs and FBI vans converged with the precision of a machine. My house, our house, sat in the middle, calm and silent, like it didn't know the sins it had sheltered. "Team Alpha in position," a voice crackled over Rivers's radio. "Execute," came the order. The front door shattered. Agents poured in, voices rising. Federal agents. "Search warrant." Through the binoculars, I saw movement inside, staff being ushered out, rooms cleared one by one. Then Darius appeared, barefoot in a robe, his hands bound behind him. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him, fury battling disbelief on his face. But my eyes searched for her. "Bedroom clear. Basement clear," voices reported. Then, "We have a runner." My stomach dropped. Through the back garden, Zuri vaulted the fence like a woman possessed. She sprinted across a neighbor's yard, hair flying, desperation in every line of her body. "Suspect heading toward Franklin Street," an agent shouted. Harris threw the car into gear, and we swung around the block. And then there she was, caught in her headlights, frozen in the street like a deer. For one suspended heartbeat, I saw her clearly. Not my daughter, not anymore, but a stranger's face twisted by rage and fear. She looked at me. Recognition struck, followed by disbelief. Then hatred, hot and raw, burned across her features. She reached into her jacket. "Gun," an agent shouted. Time fractured. Commands were screamed. Weapons drawn. My chest constricted with terror. Then the crack of a shot split the air. Zuri staggered, but the bullet hadn't touched her. An agent had fired into the sky, forcing her hand to freeze. What clattered to the pavement wasn't a gun at all, but a phone. Agents swarmed her, snapping cuffs around her wrists. She fought, cursed, then went limp, eyes hollow as they dragged her to the waiting van. I couldn't look away. When her gaze found mine again through the windshield, it wasn't rage I saw. It was emptiness, a void where my daughter once lived. Beside me, Harris asked softly, "You all right?" I swallowed hard.
No.
But it's done. Rivers climbed back into the vehicle minutes later. His face was grim, but resolved. They're both in custody. With the evidence Harold compiled, they'll be facing decades behind bars. I nodded numbly, my hands clenched tight in my lap. The house where I had laughed, cooked, loved, and mourned was now nothing more than a crime scene. My daughter and her husband were prisoners, and I was no longer the woman they had cast out. "Come on," Rivers said gently. There's someone waiting for you. We drove to a small airfield outside the city. A private jet sat on the tarmac, its engines humming low. As I climbed the steps, my heart pounded in my ears. Inside, a man rose from a seat near the back. Thinner, grayer, but unmistakable. "Lila," Harold said, his voice breaking. For a moment I stood frozen, every emotion crashing together: relief, fury, love, betrayal. The husband I had buried was alive, reaching for me, and I had no idea whether to embrace him or to demand answers that might shatter me all over again. I didn't rush into Harold's arms. My feet felt glued to the plane's floor, my heart warring with itself. He looked older, leaner, but his eyes, the same ones I'd memorized over 4 decades, watched me with the careful hope of a man who knew forgiveness was not guaranteed. "You look strong," he said finally. His voice trembled, and that tremor cracked something in me. "Strong?" I laughed, sharp and bitter. "After you let me bury you? After you left me to be humiliated, cast out, hunted? Strong doesn't cover it, Harold." He flinched, but didn't look away. "I deserve that. Every word. But I need you to hear the truth. I thought disappearing was the only way to keep you alive. If they knew you suspected anything, you'd have been killed long before now." I sat heavily in the seat across from him, crossing my arms. "And yet here I am, alive because I fought, because I endured, not because of you." He nodded slowly. "And that's exactly what I underestimated. You. I thought I was protecting you. All I really did was insult your strength." Silence stretched between us, heavy with years of love and betrayal. Finally, I asked the question that gnawed at me. "Did you know about Zuri? Did you know she was part of it?" Pain etched his face. At first, I didn't want to believe it. I thought she was just swept along by Darius. But the evidence, the recordings, she made her choices. I gathered it all, hoping one day you'd never have to see it. "But I did see it," I said flatly. "I had to testify against my own child." Harold's jaw tightened. "I'm sorry for that. More sorry than for anything else in my life." The plane droned steady, carrying us east toward a safe house on a lake in Tennessee. For a long time, neither of us spoke. When we landed, the house waiting for us was quiet and remote, its porch overlooking still water that mirrored the mountains. Agents secured the area, then left us space. For the first time in weeks, there was no chase, no courtroom, no guns. Just us. We settled into a rhythm. Morning walks along the lake. Evenings spent with files spread across the table, piecing together the ruins of our lives. Nights apart, because though the danger had passed, the wounds between us still needed mending. News came in fragments. Darius had pled guilty to several charges, bargaining for a lighter sentence. Zuri refused to speak, even to her lawyers. When the verdict came, 27 years without parole, I felt no triumph, only a hollowness where motherly pride used to live. One evening, as snow dusted the shoreline, I told Harold, "When this is over, I want to return to the mountain cabin. The real one, not as a hiding place, but as a beginning." His eyes widened. "After everything that happened there?" I looked out at the water, my reflection steady. "That's where I learned I wasn't weak. Where I discovered the woman you never believed I could be. That cabin isn't a curse, Harold. It's where I was reborn." For once, he didn't argue. He only reached for my hand. Months later, when the trials ended and protective custody loosened, we returned. The cabin had been repaired, its porch rebuilt, its interior scrubbed of the chaos it had witnessed. But the hidden rooms remained, a reminder of secrets that nearly destroyed us. I stood on that porch in the cold mountain air, Harold beside me, and whispered, "This is where we start over. Not as who we were, but as who we are now." He nodded. "Together?" "Together," I said. Snow fell softly, blanketing the pines, erasing tracks of the past. And for the first time since betrayal had shattered my life, I believed in something like hope. Not the fragile kind born of ignorance, but the hard-won kind that comes only after you've walked through fire and survived. I had lost my home, my daughter, my illusions. But I had gained myself, and no one would ever take that from me again. Lila's journey began with betrayal and ended with transformation. What her daughter and son-in-law thought would break her only sharpened her resolve. In losing her comfort, she found her courage. In losing her home, she discovered her own strength. And in facing the darkest truths, she reclaimed the light of a future that was hers to define. This wasn't just a story of corruption, lies, and family turned against itself. It was a story of resilience. Proof that even when the people closest to us betray our trust, the spirit inside us can rise stronger, fiercer, and unshakable. Lila walked into the fire as a discarded widow. She emerged as a woman who knew her worth. If this story stirred you, if it reminded you of your own battles, betrayals, and the quiet strength within, don't keep it to yourself. Share this journey with someone who needs courage. Reflect on the places in your life where you've been underestimated. And let me know in the comments, what's the moment you realized you were stronger than anyone thought? Because like Lila, your story isn't over. It's only just beginning.